Howdy folks, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update for the 27th of May 2023. We are hurtling towards the end of spring, and those who have previously been talking about the spring counteroffensive, including myself, because that was the terminology we used, are realizing that, hey, the Ukrainians aren't working to that kind of time frame. They're working to when they get the stuff and when they are ready and when the weather suits them. And we are yet to see the main thrust of the counteroffensive, though we hear news that it might not be one big counteroffensive, but lots of smaller maneuvers around the front line, which would make a lot of sense. Okay, let's go to our usual starting place. The Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. 480 liquidated personnel. That is there or thereabouts for the last few weeks, really. 3 tanks, 7 APCs, a little bit of an uptick for APCs. 22 artillery systems and 2 MLRS. They are pumping out these stats for artillery systems being lost on a daily basis. It's just phenomenal. 22 and 2 there is another huge loss. Someone called me out yesterday on, well, where's the evidence for this? And there is some evidence for this. You look at the Oryx figures and they are fairly high on their 2-day summaries that they produce. But obviously there's a difference between the Oryx figures and these figures. These are significantly higher than those. So it's going to be difficult to get every single piece of equipment taken out having visual confirmation. And I guess the question is, well, okay, how accurate are these? And that's why I say, even if they're only 50% accurate on artillery, the Russians have lost a phenomenal amount of artillery in the last 2 weeks. And that's 50% accuracy. So again, I talk about these being trends, indicative of trends. It's not for me important exactly what the number is. It's just, okay, what are the Ukrainians concentrating on and what are they predominantly having success with? And that is going to be in terms of artillery systems at the moment. Okay, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, depends how valuable that is. 31 drones and 10 cruise missiles, up not from last night, but the night before when there was a huge drone and cruise missile attack and ballistic missile attack. They didn't shoot down any ballistic missiles. 11 vehicles and fuel tanks and 3 pieces of special equipment. I'm actually going to show you a piece of what I think is a special equipment. Oh no, this is, now I can't verify what aircraft this is and when it's from, but I've seen this footage before and it's just popped up this morning. But you can see here that this is an aircraft. I literally just muted that. Holy cow. This is, sorry, it's my daily whinge. This is an airplane, Russian airplane that is a little bit worse for wear. I mean, that's some pretty, I mean, it'll probably buff up okay after a couple of hours of work in the workshop, but it's in a pretty bad way. So that is a Russian airplane. Not sure when and where that pertains to. And here we have the 44th Separate Artillery Brigade destroying a Russian command and staff vehicle. Now, I wonder whether this is included on special equipment at the bottom of that list that I show you. But these pieces of kit are expensive, are incredibly important for making the Russian offensive coherent, for bringing together everything. So that is a significant loss for the Russians. But I haven't got too much footage of other stuff because basically I don't have enough tabs. So I'm just going to concentrate on what's been going on around the front lines. So just to say that Russia are using drones to identify air defenses for ballistic missile strikes. This is really significant. This is exactly what I was saying the other day. I was saying this as well for cruise missiles being used sacrificially to identify where air defenses are and then hit the air defenses with ballistic missiles. Well, this is what the Kyiv Independent is saying. Russia uses drones to identify air defenses for ballistic missile strikes. The Russian military is using drones like the Shaheeds to distract and identify Ukraine's air defense systems, military spokesman Hermanyuk said on TV on the 26th. Subsequently, Russia tries to target them with ballistic missiles. Now, the issue for the Russians is that the ballistic missiles are quite inaccurate for ground-to-ground mode, and so they can identify where the the Ukrainian air defenses are, quite possibly, and then throw up some ballistic missiles. But there's no is actually a slim chance that a small bit of kit is going to be hit by a ballistic missile with a CEP, circle error probable, of perhaps many hundreds of meters. I think the S-300s used, surface-to-air missiles used in the ground mode, probably have a CEP of 300 to 500 meters. And that means that 50% of those missiles need to land within 300 to 500 meters of the target for it to be called a precision guided munition. So you can see that there's a slim chance that the piece of kit being targeted is actually going to be hit. It's not to say they aren't hit, but that does seem to be their modus operandi at the moment. Okay, there's a lot of talk yesterday about the hospital being hit, the clinic being hit in Dnipro. A big missile attack. I'm not going to show you this video. I mean, it's only because it's lots of injured people with blood and stuff. This has caused quite a bit of international outcry and a lot of consternation within Ukraine. There's a lot of anger with regard to what happened in Dnipro. That said, I did report some time back that the Ukrainians hit a hospital, and there was a claim it was a military hospital. It wasn't being used. I don't know if you remember, maybe 6 months ago. So, one must be careful at throwing out with our confirmation biases. We must be careful to think that always the Russians are doing this and the Ukrainians never do something like that. But then it's about knowledge of what that Ukrainian target was. This seems to be genuinely a clinic being hit because the Russians aren't using precision enough munitions, whereas I think the other what the Ukrainians hit was hit on purpose. So I think there's a difference there. This looks to be just inaccurate missiles being used, and that is your big problem. Another attack on civilian buildings in Donetsk village of New York. The settlement is held by Ukraine, but on the front line near Holivka, so it's just south of. It's between Bakhmut and Avdiivka. If you remember, the FAB 250 bomb damaged 3 apartment blocks, a nursery, dispensary, cinema hall, and a gym. As the footage shows, again, these are that's a guided munition. Were these being used as military installations, or were they genuine military targets, or is this the Russians hitting civilian targets again? Okay, now to go to what the Ukrainians are hitting. This is Mariupol. Mariupol has been under a lot of has come under a lot of attention, should we say, over the last week. Virtually no other details known yet. This was Tim White last night, I think. And this was at the Azovstal plant, famous for its defense. That seems an eon ago now. That's been targeted by the Ukrainians. They seem to be using quite a lot of Storm Shadows and long-range missiles to hit targets in Mariupol and Berdyansk. Ukraine now has intelligence of 5 of Russia's soldiers were killed and over twice that many wounded in last night's explosion in Berdyansk. That was the night before. It's thought that S-300 missiles were among those destroyed at the occupiers based at the Azov plant. Different to the one we just talked about, 2 different cities. Russia denies any problems. Then Belgorod was targeted yesterday again. Sounds of gunshots and explosions heard. Inhabitants of the region are unaware of what's happening. Explosions were heard in Maslova Pristan, Novaya Tavoljanka, and Grafovka, 20 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. That are continuing to give attention to Belgorod. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that incursion into Belgorod. The Ukrainians seem to be particularly happy with that. There was a lot of happiness when it was happening. They thought this was a really great incursion. Some analysts in the West are like, no, not too sure. I mean, if you remember, there was the claim that they actually recovered a electronic warfare installation that was hugely significant, right? That's worth just so much in terms of information and data. So I think there will be components of that incursion that will include targeted, acquisition of pieces of kit like that. I mean, I'm sure it won't be a fluke that they did recover that. I reported that at the time. So it's not just going to be about messing with the Russian psyche, about fixing the troops. So there will have been genuine targets there as well. A powerful explosion heard or seen here in Ivanhrad in Bakhmut. and that's obviously under the occupation of the Russians at the moment. And that is a pretty significant explosion there. Don't know what was hit, probably some kind of ammunition dump, but there doesn't seem to be secondary explosions going off, but that's from quite a distance. Big hit in occupied Donetsk this morning. Looks like HIMARS paid a visit to the city centre. Russian says a scientific research unit was destroyed. Now, there's some interesting stuff about this. I haven't got the link. There's another video where the Russian TV station was reporting on this, or something along these lines. They're reporting, and that helped the Ukrainians to target exactly where they wanted to go. So there were some issues. So it was hit, then they started reporting on something, and then they hit exactly where they were kind of reporting on it or nearby. Anyway, there was some issue to do with the reporting, helping the Ukrainians actually guide their attack. But I might have to look into that. Look, again, Berdyansk has been hit. So we are really seeing on a daily basis these places behind the Russian lines in at distances that are out of range for HIMARS being hit by the Ukrainians. So one assumes that they are using Storm Shadows or similar munitions. Right, just to mention again the Ivan Kurs, I just don't know what to think about this. That's my honest conclusion. I don't know what to think. The Russians are throwing out loads of curveballs here, and indeed, it seems like there has been. Oh, I need to come to that. In fact, let's go to this now before we come on to that. I've got some things out of order. This is a problem when you've got so many tabs. Okay, just lastly on the Ukrainian hits, local Russian authorities are reporting that 2 drones have attacked a Transnaft oil facility in Litvinovo in Pskov Oblast. So the Ukrainians are hitting Russia still. Now I'm going to go back to the Ivan Kurs. So the Ivan Kurs was supposedly hit by drones, although the Russians claimed that they destroyed all 3 drones. Then we had claims that there were 5 drones, 2 of them hit, and then there were claims about it coming back to port, but then it came back to port quicker than it would have been able to. And then there seems to be further geolocated actual, so here in this case, Geoconfirmed has done geolocation of the ship in port. The claims were this was yesterday. Of course, you can't geolocate the time. Well, you can in some cases, but not here. It's like they are unable to say exactly when this footage was taken. But then when he was questioned on it, he said, well, we looked at the weather, the wind direction, and so on and so forth, and it has to be after April because of these barges being there, blah, blah, blah. He said, I have no reason, here he says, we have no reason to believe that it's not from today. So it could well be that the Ivan Kurs is in Sevastopol, and then you also added to that, you get these satellite images that show a boat that looks very similar to the Ivan Kurs. It's difficult to get the detail on it, but it's moored in the place where the Ivan Kurs would be moored there. And so lots of people are saying, well, it looks like the Ivan Kurs could well be in Sevastopol. And then you get lots of pro-Ukrainians saying that, well, it could be the sister boat, but the sister boat's in the Northern Fleet. Yeah, but we don't know it's not in the Black Sea. And so all these claims and counterclaims. And my conclusion is, hey, actually, I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure what's going on here. And forgive me for being inaccurate on that. Anyway, let's go to a couple of bits. Russia on fire. In Rostov, a warehouse is on fire. What started with only a small fire now turned into a big one covering 400 square meters. It's unclear how it started. And then we've got I've left this to the end because I didn't hear about this yesterday, but this is Russia, how Russia is killing Ukraine's economy. This is a modern oil refinery in Mariupol, totally destroyed. And this is the sort of activity that Ukraine tries to do on. Sorry, my words. I'm struggling with my words today. It's Saturday and it's early, and my MS brain is struggling. But Ukraine tries to do this on Russia quite often. They hit the oil refineries, of course, but it's not to say that Russia doesn't do this back to Ukraine. And here is an example of that. And that obviously hurts the economy, hurts a war effort in the same way that that's the intention for the Ukrainians on the Russians. Okay, let's go to odds and sods and bits and pieces of military news. Top US general, Russia cannot win in Ukraine militarily. US Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, said that Russia can no longer achieve victory over Ukraine through military means. In turn, Ukraine is capable of liberating all of its territories, Milley said on the 25th. Liberation is unlikely to happen in the near future, however, and the fighting ahead will be difficult and bloody. Now, this idea that Russia can't win militarily, and to say this, he said that on May the 25th. Okay, so it's taken him that long to realize, or to very publicly say, Russia can't win militarily. I'm just going to pat myself on the back because, as I keep saying, I keep talking about this article, April the 4th, 2022. That's over a year ago now. I said exactly the same thing in an article. I wrote an article for Only Sky saying, "Where to now, Putin? Because there is no way you can win." And I was talking militarily, and I was doing an analysis of exactly what Putin was trying to do, having to change all his plans, and ending up with none of those plans are in any way achievable, militarily speaking. So it's brilliant Mark Milley is saying that, and I would agree 100%, but that has been the case for a very long time. I just don't know what. I had a bit of a rant about this yesterday in one of my videos. I don't know what you're doing, Putin, because you can't win, you won't win, and therefore you're just sacrificing all these people for some kind of imperialistic project that's just untenable. Anyway, that aside, the head of Russian-occupied Crimea doubts that Russia's regular army can defend the peninsula, according to UK intelligence. The main element of the Russian garrison, the 22nd Army Corps, is currently mostly deployed outside of Crimea and has taken heavy casualties. In fact, the UK intelligence update did indeed talk about this. It's to do with this guy being experienced at raising paramilitary groups, and it looks like that's what he's going to try and do, because there just aren't the regular armed forces able to defend Crimea, as according to him and the UK intelligence agency there, Defence Intelligence. So moving on, we have Zaluzhny using both hands here. So I showed you the video of him, and he did look a bit stiff. I don't know whether he was injured and whatnot. So all those rumors about Zaluzhny being dead, having craniotomy, could he have been injured? Could he have been in hospital? Possibly. Is he maybe a little bit sore? And I don't know. But here he is at a naval shipyard receiving a small armored artillery boat called Butcher. This is reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. So he was there giving out awards or whatever they are. A flag, actually, and that's good news that Zaluzhny is looking to be more alive and well with each passing day. Okay, staying on Zaluzhny, here is an incredibly slick video, and this talks to how Ukraine are winning the information war. I think their handle on PR is way better than Russia's. Look at the quality of this. Look at how well it's shot. Look at the editing and the HD.
Україна, рідна земля мати. Господь, Отець наш Небесний. Благословіть. Благословіть! Я йду знищувати! Ворогів землі різної! Вбив моїх братів! Гвалтівників моїх посадок! Нехай рука моя буде твердою! Щоб вбивати ворогів! Нехай око моє буде ясним! Щоб вбивати ворогів! Нехай зброя моя буде справною! Щоб вбивати ворогів! Нехай воля моя буде сталь! Щоб вбивати ворогів! Україно! Рідна земля мати! Господь, Отець наш Небесний! Благословіть! Наш рішучий наступ! Нашу священну помсту! Нашу святу перемогу!
Now, I have no idea what he was saying there, but you can't help but feel it, understand it. So this has been created, the music, the emotions, the quality of that has been all been put together so that no matter, you know, whether you understand the language or not, you know what's going on there. And this is a kind of like, we're all united, we're strong, we've got good kit, we know how to use it. and our morale is high, and we have national pride. You've got all the images you need, the tridents, the flags, and the beards, because let's face it, it's been a long time since I've done a beard report, but Ukraine do win the beard war. I find stuff like that interesting. When I look at Ukrainian soldiers and I look at the UK armed forces and think, right, they're not allowed beards, all got to have pretty much the same haircut and clean faces, apart from there's a weird. My father was in the Navy, and you can have a beard in the Navy, but you can't grow a beard. So you have to go on leave, grow it, and then come back. It's like, right, you got a beard. You can't like go through the process of growing it. So as it grows out, and like, no, you have to be clean shaven or a beard. So when do I grow it? But anyway, so there are these kind of strict rules about facial hair and stuff like that. Ukraine seems to be way more, but especially when you've got international legions and so on and so forth. It's kind of like, okay, you're here, you're putting your life on the line. If you want an earring and a big beard, go for it, mate. And I think by having that guy at the front it's absolutely no accident that that guy is your main guy there. Big beard, earring. He's one of us. He's just a normal bloke, but he's in this incredibly important position, and we can all do this. I'm going to go and sign up. I can do that. I've got big beard and an earring, or whatever. Nothing is by mistake in these kind of. I always tell my sons when they're watching films or TV shows, you look around the set, nothing is there by mistake. They've dressed that set completely, and so if the camera focuses on something in a film, that's going to be relevant later on in that film. If nothing in the script is there is padding out, it's there for a reason. So if they say something early in the film that seems a bit weird, that's going to have relevance later. And so now my boys, when they watch films, when we all watch films together, they're like, that's going to be relevant later, and it's absolutely right. So when it comes to something like this, which is so precisely pieced together, there is a reason they've chosen him to be the main guy. What does he say to you? What does that imagery say to you? Okay, Ukraine is ready to launch its long-awaited counteroffensive. One of the Ukraine's top security officials, Danilov, so National Security Advisor, told the BBC in an interview. Danilov declined to name a date, but said an attack to recapture territory could begin tomorrow, a day after tomorrow, or in a week. Yes, it could happen imminently. Yes, that's vague enough to keep the Russians on their toes, though. A Ukrainian counteroffensive will be the biggest battle in Europe since World War II, says a former German foreign minister. So there's lots of discussion about the counteroffensive and about how big and how imminent it is. But I think we're still left wondering, hey, I don't know when it is and how big it's going to be. I mean, each passing day, we're going to go on to speak about this now. Each passing day, they are getting more and more equipment. So you can see why they are holding off. Okay. But first, let's go to Sweden and Gripens. Sweden will, quote, try to accommodate instructing Ukrainian pilots on Gripen fighter jets if Ukraine makes the request. I'm sure that request came in like 2 minutes later. Yeah, we want. Yeah. Sweden's Defense Minister Paul Jonsson said. He, however, clarified that Sweden has no plans to supply Ukraine with Gripens at this stage. I think that's just kind of smoke and mirrors for like. You're not going to offer to train them on Gripens if there's no way that they're going to get Gripens. I mean, that's just pointless. People who make Saab who make the Gripens are going to be like, yeah, we want to sell Gripens, so we're up for them getting Gripens. And I think it's also a sensible thing for placing. It's all about the industrial military complex in that case, but that's going to inform Sweden's decisions at least partly. It's not going to be just about, oh yeah, shall we give them Gripens because that's what they need. There's going to be like, well, what do we want as a nation? It's also going to be connected to their accession to NATO too. And there are all these things going on that are going to be leading into these decisions. Netherlands will likely be sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, as we know, but they're starting to become more formalized after they're finished with a pilot training, reports Bloomberg. Netherlands is one of the main countries that pushed for Ukraine to get F-16s. Currently, they have 29 of them. And it's all going to be about what variants really that they get. Footage has appeared from a Volok wheeled APC provided, it's not from one, it's of one, provided by Slovenia in service with the Ukrainian Armed Forces. It became known that recently Slovenia transferred 20 of these in secret to Ukraine in April this year. There's going to be an awful lot of kit, and I've said this many times, in Ukraine that we don't know that they have, that's not been announced. We hear the headline announcements, but that's not to say they're not getting a shed load of stuff on the sly from every nation that you can think of. We know that Turkey gives a lot of stuff to Ukraine without really announcing them. And suddenly they've got all these Kurupi MRAPs or Cobras or whatever, 4x4s. Suddenly there's a whole trainload of them in Ukraine, and that wasn't announced. But so there is stuff going on under the bonnet all the time. Right, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Zaluzhny, as you know, was present during the transfer of an armed boat. So just to mention in military aid, here's an armed boat, and that is now in the possession of Ukraine. Probably, I don't know where this has come from, but there was talk about America they've not only given riverine boats, and this could be one of those, but they've also given, I think, larger boats. And I was talking about how they got them there and whether those are transportable on sort of trains and trucks and whatnot. Okay, talking about, more equipment coming over all the time. Next train with Italian M109L. So these are self-propelled howitzers that Italy have given a whole load of these over. They've been getting them ready, so they've been sending them into wherever they get fixed up in Italy, and then from there to Ukraine, and they've been coming over in batches. And here is either the latest batch or the last batch, I'm not sure, but it again, significant help to the Ukrainians. They're getting these NATO self-propelled howitzers. There's going to be an attrition of their own howitzers. I mean, you see the figure of the Russian losses. There will be losses for the Ukrainians, of course, as well, and natural wear and tear. So these being given on a consistent basis is incredibly useful. Ukraine's defense minister, Alexei Reznikov, I mean, this is just very cool. This guy has quite a cool job where he gets to go around the world, like pleading with different. So he's jet setting around the world, getting to see all these wonderful places. Okay, he's not going to do sightseeing, is he? But he's going around the world, speaking to all the most important people in the world, and saying, "Can we have this? Can we have that? Can we have that?" And then when he gets that stuff off the nations, he then has PR stunts where he's driving around in them, and he just gets to play around with loads of really big kit. In this case, Ukraine's defense minister, Alexei Reznikov, has demonstrated Ukrainian-made, so this isn't going around the world, but this is actually indigenous all-terrain vehicle, the Bogan. 2 of these are already in service in different units of Ukraine's armed forces. This is just really very cool, and I'm jealous. It just looks like a giant toy to play around with. So this is 1.5 minutes. I'll just show you a little bit of this. I mean, you can see that looks just very cool. And here he is saying, "Yeah, I'm the defense minister. I surely I can drive around in one of these. You'll let me drive around in one of these? Of course we will. Yeah, you're the one that pays our wages, probably. So anyway, these are all terrain because, as you can see, they're pretty useful. Those big wheels, being able to ford. I don't know that they can actually. I don't know if they're fully amphibious, but they can certainly ford shallow waters. Anyway, that's pretty cool, is the point, and he gets to do cool stuff. Right, Canada. In the coming weeks, Canada will hand over 4,800 assault rifles and 1 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine, reports the government of Canada. That's cool. Thank you, Canada. The United States of Canada come up with the goods. Joking, obviously. Media. NATO is unlikely to offer Ukraine SWIFT membership, considers upgraded relationship instead. So NATO members are unlikely to provide a SWIFT membership plan to Ukraine, considering instead an upgraded relationship format. Euroactiv has reported, citing unnamed NATO sources. The new plan would involve setting up a NATO-Ukraine Council and opening new paths of cooperation, according to the report. The upgraded format would ensure that Ukraine has a permanent seat at the table and can initiate, I thought I was going to say irritate Putin, initiate the meetings when they wish. This is actually pretty important because it's going to be very difficult for them to get into NATO, especially given some of the other nations like Turkey and some of the other difficult, Hungary as well, nations involved. But if they can effectively have a seat at the table, or actually have a seat at the table and effective membership, then what's the diff? They might not be able to get security guarantees in the same way that Article 5. I mean, Article 5 is your main thing about NATO, isn't it? So if you can get everything else but Article 5, at the moment, you've got NATO giving security assurances to Ukraine. The only thing that's missing is NATO troops, putting in uh, NATO aircraft, meaning that you would have the inability to fly in Ukraine. All these kind of things that NATO could do but aren't doing because they can't, initiate Article 5. But everything else they're doing. So I think this is just getting Ukraine as close as possibly can be without giving them the full membership. And I think that's great news because then it's just a much smaller jump to full membership at a later date. You're already starting to see, as you can see with the military aid that's being given, NATO equipment being given to Ukraine and Ukraine buying NATO equipment. So they're already going through that transition phase, and they're phasing out the old Russian Soviet era equipment, not least because it enables them to get accession to NATO, but also because they can't actually replace some of that kit, or they can't get ammunition for that kit. So it's a practical as well as a kind of geopolitical decision. Anyway, moving on to geopolitical stuff, the US Treasury has sanctioned Wagner Group head in Mali, Ivan Maslov, as part of its pushback on Wagner expansionism in Africa, supporting Russia's war against Ukraine, according to a press release from the 25th. So that's really good. We are seeing Wagner are now like front and center of people's attention. Everyone knows who Wagner are, and whereas for the last decade they've been able to kind of think about Africa and places around the world without so much attention from, certainly not from the international media. Yes, international intelligence agencies would have been on to them, but now everyone's got permission to sanction the heck out of these guys and keep them on a really tight leash as far as what they are doing around the world, constrain them from kind of free activity, from their ability to move money, from their ability to physically move like through certain countries, so on and so forth. Okay, I need to just rejig what I said. I don't know, was it a week ago? So, President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, apparently declined a meeting with Zelensky. That was reported incorrectly, and I didn't correct myself after that. It was reported by other people, and I latched onto that. Apparently, it was Zelensky that didn't go to the meeting, was unable to go to the meeting. So, actually, it wasn't da Silva who pulled out of the meeting or refused to have a meeting. And then that got misreported, and then people are slagging off da Silva, thinking he's so pro-Russian. And it depends where you sit politically, is whether you're going to be a fan of like a left-wing government in Brazil or a fan of a right-wing government in Brazil or wherever you sit there, as to how you kind of interpret Lula. I sit slightly to the left, right? And so when I would quite like Lula to succeed, because I saw Bolsonaro as being deeply problematic environmentally, geopolitically, and so on and so forth in Brazil. Bolsonaro was a huge problem, and my hope is that da Silva can right a lot of the wrongs there. And so but I know my biases will look on him more favorably, and I'm kind of trying to explain to you now how, am I being biased here? But this is, so that's good news that actually it wasn't him at fault for that meeting issue. But also, this is really, really important. So, President of Brazil has refused to come to Russia at the invitation of Putin. I can't tell you how significant I think this is. And this is good news for because I think that's da Silva going in the right direction. But it's really impactful geopolitically speaking. So when you've got BRICS and you've already got him trying to get together with Argentina to create an international trade, a currency for international trade, a bilateral currency, which is something that BRICS wanted to do, as one of their intentions is to provide an alternative to the US dollar and an alternative hegemony set up to the US dominance globally. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Well, it seems that he's positioning himself quite often away from BRICS and more in terms of South America. And when he's offered to go to Russia and he says, no. Now, whether America are doing stuff behind the scenes saying, don't do that. If you do that, then we'll make things difficult over here. I don't know. But his positioning that is super important. Now, am I so happy about that because of my own baggage I'm bringing to that evaluation? Probably, possibly, but actually, just like trying to be as objective as possible. My desires would be that BRICS does not work. When you've got China and Russia operating in a way that influences the world, I think problematically, then any positioning that Brazil has that runs contrary to BRICS and the desires of Putin and Xi Jinping, I think is incredibly important. And here is one. I'd be interested to know what you guys think, and if there are any Brazilian viewers, let me know what you think as well. Uh, am I misinterpreting that? And then finally, Poland is going to close the border for trucks registered in Belarus and Russia. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration of Poland intends to suspend the movement of trucks registered in Belarus and Russia across the Polish-Belarusian border. This is super, super important. Just to let you know, that's Nexter. And the guy this is a Belarusian independent media outlet, and the guy who kind of runs that was basically imprisoned by Lukashenko, but now Lukashenko's pardoned him, and I talked about that the other day as being super important. And what does that say about what Lukashenko is trying to do in positioning himself? I think, yeah, I don't know what the reasoning behind that was, but I think that's pretty significant. Anyway, that's also significant in terms of trade between Russia and Belarus and Europe, and it just cuts off those two countries from being able to get economic gain, but also it's just another reason why this decision to go to war was a bad one. All these things are going to hurt Russia and Belarus. It's about looking at, when I look at evidence, I talk about abductive reasoning, which is okay, which hypothesis is better supported by this data. So if you've got, in this case, it's like starting this war was a good idea for Russia. Starting this war was a really bad idea for Russia. And when you look at all the data that comes in all the time, it's like, what does it better support? So again, it goes back to, can Russia win? What are they going to gain? And any bit of data I look at in this really digital way, which is like, does this help Russia or does this harm Russia going forward? Does this show that this was a good decision or this was a bad decision? And pretty much every bit of data we ever look at is like, this is a really bad decision. I mean, this is Putin's decision to go to war will end up being one of the worst ones made in living history, for sure. No doubt about that. Anyway, that's my analysis of news. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for choosing to be with me today. It's a Saturday. One of my boys has got a football tournament all afternoon, so I'm going to struggle. And I've got an interview later. So very busy day. I am super busy. I do like 5 jobs at the moment. Just to let you know, on a channel front. Well, no, I'll probably make a channel announcement at some point. But I am just insanely busy. So if I struggle to get my extra video out today, I apologise, but I will do my best. Anyway, toodle pits. Speak to you soon.